Hey guys, hope everyone is well out there. I wanted to make this video. Unfortunately, we have to talk about, shrimp dick, pimple butt, ripped, rare, not even receding in bald, ripped, rare, and bald. So, Wes Watson. Because, unfortunately, you can't turn on, well, I should say fortunately, but you can't turn on YouTube without seeing the whole internet roasting this guy. So we're going to talk about Wes Watson. And, the title of this video is Wes Watson Deserves No Mercy. And I'm going to talk about why that is. So I was at class last night, and the instructor that taught the class last night was young guy, probably like in his mid-20s, late 20s, and he's been training for, I don't know, 15 years, maybe longer. And he's one of the most deadly people there. He's a world class, goes all over the world teaching jiu-jitsu. He's world class. He's absolutely excellent. And he was talking about how he used to get bullied when he was a kid, and that really sparked him to start doing martial arts. And if you look at a lot of MMA fighters or just martial arts people in general, a lot of times, not all of them obviously, but there was a lot that had that story. And because, obviously most of my audience is men, I'll just kind of keep this for the men, but women can, they can maybe relate to this too, but I think it's more of a male thing. When you grow up and you get to be about in middle school, high school, you start to notice that some people become bullies. Some people get bullied, but at the very least, you've seen other kids get bullied. You start to be able to pick up on the personality and the tendencies and the psychology of the bully if you actually look at it. And that's what Wes Watson is. And I've noticed this years ago that the guy's a bully. He may have a lot of good things to say, and I'm not going to take away from the fact that he does, because that wouldn't be being honest and fair. He does have a lot of really good things to say that are really valuable, that can help people. But someone can have a lot of knowledge, and someone can have a lot of insight, but they can still be a piece of shit. And they can still be lacking in a lot of ways that are really, truly character flaws in them. And so we're going to talk about that today, about the character flaws I see in the man and why I think that he deserves no mercy. So, clearly he's affected by the hate that he's getting on the internet. In fact, he's trying to go after people and sue people on Reddit for talking shit about him, because allegedly many people have alleged that they got scammed by him, which I don't doubt for a second. But also, they say that you are the company that you keep. If you lie down with dogs, you wake up with fleas. And I happen to have run across one of his little minions in the gym, because again, I live in South Florida, and I didn't have an altercation with this guy, but the way that he was looking at me, I think I had to, he was training somebody and I had to walk in front of her to because she was standing right near the rack where the dumbbells were. I had to go get some dumbbells because what I was doing. And he just kind of mean mugged me, and he said something to her. I wasn't sure exactly what, but I could tell it was something negative by his body language about me. But he didn't say me in particular. He said like he was talking negatively about other people at the gym, and the guy's tatted up, looks super angry. And I've gone on YouTube and I've listened to a couple of this guy's videos, and he's a total Wes Watson wannabe. The whole I went to prison and now I've changed my life and now I can change yours type of bullshit thing. Let me tell you something about people that get caught committing a crime. And Joey Merlino, who is a guy I've really, really respect, head of the Philadelphia crime family, he said this about Michael Francis. He said, something about how Michael was talking about how, going to prison, and how he's not part of the life anymore, and that, he's a Christian now and he's a better man now. And again, I'm not trying to insult Michael Francis. I don't know his heart. And I don't know if he's really sincere about it. But nonetheless, what Joey Merlino said is he said, you're not a changed man. You just got caught. You would never have changed your ways if you hadn't gotten caught. And that's something that you really want to understand about these guys that talk about how they're changed, how they're no longer, a menace to society as they were. Because here's the reality, guys. These guys aren't changed. These guys have just figured out better ways not to go back to jail. But they're still the same dirtbags. People don't really change. People can change their habits. Fat people can become fit. Poor people can become rich. People can change their habits and thus get better results in life, but they're still who they are. And I know this because I have let people go, and I've met them later in life, and maybe they're doing better in life, maybe they're not, but once I really spend enough time with them, I can still see that they're still who they always were. They just may have smartened up a little bit. And that's all that this guy is. That's all that the people that he surrounds himself with. These are not changed men. They're not reformed criminals. They're just criminals that have figured out a way, or at least thus far, not to get back in with the system. And that's one of the reasons why the recidivism rate is like 90%. All right? So I don't take this whole people, they've changed their ways, so to speak, because they want to be a better person. Or they changed their ways because they got caught. That's it. All right, that's important to understand. But Wes Watson is a bully. He talks down to people. He talks down to people because they're either not as ripped as he is, they don't have as much money as he has, or they don't have as many followers as he has. And those are very superficial, primordial things to, try to denigrate somebody for. And again, I understand, I agree in principle that men should be fit, that you should have your money right, that, you should, be somebody that's in good standing with whatever community you belong to. Okay, but, and I've said this I don't know if I've said this in other videos or not, but I will say it in this video. There are men that may not have a six-pack and they may not be ripped, but nonetheless they're extremely good fathers. They're reliable employees, or they're successful business owners. They take care of their family. They help their friends. They're charitable. They're generous. They help others. They contribute a lot to their community. And so, yeah, maybe they have a weakness, maybe they have a lacking in the fitness department, but that doesn't make it right to, harangue them for that and to denigrate them as a man. You know, it's a very superficial thing to do, and it's something that a bully would do. Because here's the thing, and I made this video and I'm gonna post it. I haven't posted it yet, but I'm gonna post it. But again, you take a real tough guy like Chuck Zito. For those of you that don't know, Lyle Alzado, those guys don't talk down to people. They don't shit on people because they're not as tough as they are. They don't have as much notoriety as they do. They actually treat people pretty well, unless they're being disrespected, and then they take care of business. Okay. But Wes, on the other hand, he chooses to denigrate people that are beneath him, or that can't fight back, that are lower than him. And I guarantee, if there was an MMA fighter, a jiu-jitsu guy, whatever, somebody that really knew how to fight, but maybe they weren't rich, maybe they weren't ripped, maybe they didn't have a million followers, I don't think that he would talk that way to them, because Wes can only talk down to people that he believes won't stand up for themselves. And that's why he did what he did with Andrew Wilson, because he looked at Andrew Wilson, and by the sheer optic of him, he thought, this guy's weak, he's flabby, he won't stand up to me, so I'll just take a shit on him. So Wes is a bully. He tries to qualify himself with things that are only going to attract like-minded, superficial, just unsophisticated type of people. Because the thing of it is that I've never had more respect for somebody because they pull up in a really expensive car. Like, that's not a qualifier to me for respect. I mean, it's cool. It tells me that they probably have money, but that doesn't automatically make me treat them a certain way just because they pull up in an Aston Martin. Because the thing is that you don't know what someone's value is, and you don't know if someone's character. And there's a whole lot of people that I see that don't look like Wes Watson, that can kick ass, that are good fathers, that are helpful, that are honorable, that are contributing members to their community. And by Wes's definition, they're pieces of shit because they don't have, big muscles, and they're not pulling up in a fucking Lamborghini. When is a culture, when have we, and why have we gotten to this point where this is what we're using as qualifiers to calibrate the respect that we should have for somebody? And this is why, like, Wes Watson, for all the good that he said, it all gets deleted based on the way he carries himself, and based on how he has shown up in public, not only at the Fresh and Fit podcast, but with the gym incident, really twice, because he went off on Eric Kanefsky. When Eric wasn't trying to fight him, he was just kind of busting balls and did a little spoof video, and Wes could have laughed it off and been cool about it, and probably gained a lot of respect back, and could have lessened a lot of the hate, but he fed into it. He acted in a way that we all thought he would act. And then the way he talks to his girlfriend about you have to greet me when you come in the door to make me feel like you're attracted to me. That if that doesn't scream insecurity, then you guys are beyond it. Anyone that doesn't see that is beyond help. That is so weak and pathetic and childish and insecure that, like, this guy does not qualify to be coaching anybody, and he still is that motherfucker who, assaulted somebody, did the burglary, breaking and entering that got him locked up for 10 years. He is the same motherfucker. He's a bully. He takes advantage of people. And I think that there's going to be a day of reckoning, hopefully on May 22nd when he has his court date, because I do want him to suffer. And I want him to suffer because of the damage that he's causing to society. I am the first person to criticize feminism and gender politics, identity politics. I think it's fucking terrible. I am anti-feminism. I'm anti-identity politics. I think it's divisive. I think it divides people. I think it does unnecessary bifurcation in society of drawing people into two different camps, either for something or against something. They're using wedge issues to try to divide people. So I'm the first to criticize that. But on the other hand, this is what Americans have a tendency to do, is they overcorrect. We overcorrect when we see something wrong to going back the other way. We have to remember that, you can be a strong man, you can be masculine, you can be a leader, you can be respected and not act the way that Wes does. And there's a whole host of guys who I could point to as examples of who that is. Sylvester Stallone, Jocko Willink, Joe Rogan, Dwayne from the cowboy guy, I keep forgetting his YouTube name. Jordan Peterson would be another guy, even though he's more of an intellectual, but that I think Sam Harris is a good example. I think that Chuck Zito is a great example. I think there's a lot of guys out there that are rough and tough and alpha guys that don't need to come out and talk about how badass they are, don't need to throw it in your face of how much money they have, and more importantly, don't need to shit on other people that don't have those things or don't have those stats across the board. Because again, you can say all the right things, and I agree with probably over 90% of what Wes says, but because of the way he carries himself, it all flies out the window. It doesn't mean shit to me, because you can talk the talk, and if you don't walk the walk, your talk is bullshit. And that's all that Wes is. Wes is a bunch of talk, and his walk is not congruent with his talk. He's a negative influence on society. He is leaving out a lot of what makes a good man a good man. A man, there's two parts of this. They say it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. That saying has been said. It's not that profound. I'm not trying to come off like all woo-woo about that or overly sagacious, but it's also important that when you're in a garden, to be able to garden and turn that warrior off. And it's also important that when there's a war, is to turn the warrior on. If you're charged up and jacked up all the fucking time, you're out of balance. Your nervous system is out of balance. Your brain is out of balance. You're going to have no peace. And that's really a result of steroids, though, which we all know he's blasting that. So, you know, there's a time and a place for many different archetypes of what it means to be a man. And the left has really denigrated the warrior aspect of masculinity. But this new, I don't want to call it the right, but this new reaction to the left, or to the identity politics and the feminism, is rejecting the, for the lack of a better word, the gardener aspect of being a man. You know, um, you can still be kind and generous and compassionate and treat others below you with respect. You know, it doesn't take a whole lot to just be decent to somebody, even if they're, you know, fat or poor or they have an ugly girlfriend. Like, you don't need to disrespect them. You don't need to make fun of them. See, it's easy to do, and I'm not gonna lie. I get the impulse to do it every now and again when I see somebody like that. But like, I wouldn't go up and do that to them. But sometimes I because I do recognize it's a weakness. But at the same time, you know, that person probably doesn't feel very good about themselves, that they're out of shape, or that they're broke, or that they have a fat ugly girlfriend, or whatever the case may be. So like, you piling on is just being a bully. And that's why, like, all of us guys that, you know, that are athletic, that are fit, that are doing well, like, we need to still be compassionate to those other people, because we don't know why they're in the situation that they're in, number one. And number two, they still can have a lot of value as a human being and as a man. And three, a lot of times, like, some people, so that, like, sometimes some people need tough love. I'm a big believer in that. Like, some people need a kick in the ass, and that works for some people, but it can also go the other way. And so you have to understand that different people need a different approach, and there's no one size fits all in life. We're all different. You have to meet people where they're at. And you know what? Some people are not ready to change, and that's just okay. Or some people are never going to change, and they, you know, but even if they're not willing to change, even if they've accepted their lot in life of being fat or being out of shape or being a dork or being whatever, like, that doesn't make it right to make fun of them or treat them like shit or denigrate them or talk down to them. That's what a bully does. What a real man, what a real leader does, is tries to uplift people, tries to show by example and through compassion and through, you know, trying to be a good friend or just a good role model in general of what is obtainable, what's possible. And I'd much rather be that kind of a man, where you can still be strong, still be tough, still be successful, still have, you know, women, still have respect in the community, but being humble and human enough to treat people that are ostensibly below you with respect as well. And that's a big part of being a good, strong man, is that you look out for the weak. You look out, you know what? I want to be the guy that stands up to the bully, that doesn't allow. And I look at guys like Chuck Zito, guys like Lyle Alzado, guys like that, you know, there's a lot of guys on YouTube too. I know there's a guy that commentates on a lot of the UFC fights. I forget the guy's name. He's a light-skinned black guy, or maybe he's Dominican. Steven teaches something or something like that. He's another good example of, like, a guy that I would respect, and it's a good man. You know, that would, you know, we should be, you know, not allowing the weakest amongst us to go through bullying if we have an opportunity to step in. You know, you never know. You never know how bad someone's having it. Some kid could be on the verge of killing themselves or shooting up a school. And like, if there was, you know, a strong, tough man that was there to give them a helping hand, a friendly, you know, just to show that they acknowledge that they're alive, that they're a human being. That could go a long way to helping people, and might even get them on the road to bettering themselves. And that's all I gotta say. I know this is a little bit of a long video, but it needs to be said. Don't fucking allow bullies to promulgate their message without scrutiny, without calling into question their character, or in this case, somebody that has zero character. Because Wes Watson has zero character. His friends have zero character. I don't even want to call them friends. His minions have zero character, and it needs to be called out because there's a lot of impressionable young men that get, they drink the Kool-Aid. They get mesmerized by, all the tantalizing, overt show of materialism, whether it's the cars or it's the women or it's the money or it's the rented mansion or the tattoos. All these things are meant to lure you in, and sometimes you can get blinded by that because you don't have the maturity and the wisdom that comes with age and with just being someone that's seeking wisdom, to have the discernment to say, this is a man that may have a good message in part, may have a lot of truthful, wise things to say, but this man's walk is no good. The way this man treats other people is terrible. And I can tell you, as somebody that lives in South Florida, that deals with the public on a day-to-day basis, that's met a lot of people who have had encounters with Wes, who say the most consistent thing, and most of these people that are telling me this are women, are telling me that the guy's a fucking asshole and they just want nothing to do with him, and that nobody likes him, and that he's a cancer to society, and nobody wants to be around this guy. And you know what? I hope that if you're what this video is really for, because the guys that know, but it's the guys that are in their early 20s that are struggling with life, that think that they need to, what I would say is this: take from Wes what's useful and discard the messenger. If you need to be told to not drink, to not smoke, to not do drugs, to work out, to figure out a useful skill that you can monetize, like that's what you can take all that, and that's about the start and the finish of what Wes's value really is. Other than that, like if you just needed to hear that and that got you on the right page to drop the drink, to drop the drugs, to drop the unhealthy lifestyle, then like that's great. But like beyond that, like I would say that he really has no value, and it doesn't take that much. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are preaching that same message that don't carry themselves like Wes Watson. So I hope that you guys found this useful, and stay tuned for more videos. Hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching.